Gracious God, I thank you that you are present with us, that you want to speak to us even through this. You guide and direct our conversations in your name. Amen. Even as before we enter into the book itself, mass shootings can easily become and as we know today, political bias, all kinds of problems. So how do we even begin among us? We might have different political leanings. We ending mass violence. How do we talk with each other that we can learn together, hear together? How do we allow this to become simply a political confrontation with each other? How do we do it? Ban the use of the word God. Okay. Yeah.
I think look for common ground.
Okay, look for common ground. And respectful.
Listen to the other person's point of view.
Listen to the other person's point of view. I gave a couple of scriptures. There's one other beginning. In the book of James, it says, be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Good words. And understanding, but only in expressing his. Then Proverbs 12. There's one who, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. So, important about the words we say, both here as well as ever, can either create pain in the people's lives, understanding, or they can bring healing and understanding. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, in a little book called Life Together, I would highly recommend it, says, owes to others in the fellowship, and he's talking about the fellowship in the church, to them. So we talk about listening. Matt sent me, before he left, sent an email, and in the email to a brave space, and he said this might help use it if in the area of learning to listen to each other and help each other. So it says, together we will create brave space thing as a safe space. We exist in the real world, scars, and we have all caused wounds. In the to turn down the volume of the outside world, we amplify voice. We call each other to more truth and love, to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility. We know we will not be perfect. It will not always, but it will be our brave space together and inside. Important words. Question that we need to ask ourselves right away. are we studying this book in the first place? Why are we studying this topic in the first? So maybe with that would be, why are you here? What draws you? Yes.
Because of people and want to be as helpful as I can possibly be.
Okay. Mhm. Be helpful. Bruce.
because my wife,
Uh-huh.
and I'd add to that. Of Christian view on this topic.
With your first question, though, or with your first statement, because my wife was. Yeah,
There is, I mean, I think it's obvious.
yeah,
We all worship together too, and churches are not immune from.
churches are not immune, as we have seen in our history in. Mhm.
Because it's a very. And you feel like, oh, what can we do about that? Feeling that we get. The sentiment seems to be great. Things that we think we should do, but they don't occur.
Pastor Matt said a number of times to me, desire is that we look what is there that especially are to be aware of, and how does it impact our lives even now? So let's go on. How do you picture? How do you imagine, or what image comes to your mind when you think of mass shooters? And I'm not going to ask you a lot of questions. So,
There are people that are very angry. Have deep-seated trauma or anger.
okay, so the trauma, loners,
Male,
pardon,
male.
male. I think the figure was like 98% or 96% are male.
And young. Men.
And a high percentage are young. Pardon?
Chaotic background.
Chaotic backgrounds. Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. How many have read the first chapter? Really good. I want to read, so the first. And I don't have the book. I go to it because I bought the Kindle before the books came even. Let me just read this. Does this, what the authors are sharing here in their shooter, is it anywhere close to of mass shooters? So nearly 6 hours into the interrogation, there is a moment. The teenage boy had just confessed to killing 17 people at his former high school. He sits slumped in one leg shackled to the floor. He's dressed hospital gown that billows open the back whenever he leans forward, revealing a frame. It's impossible he could even hold a semi-automatic rifle, let alone use one to this town had just witnessed. What do you now, if she was, his younger brother asked, the police room, hoping he might solicit a motive. His brother who adopted the boys as children from the same birth mother. She would cry, both boys agreed unanimously. Monster now, the brother says. A monster? The shooter starts to shake. Like yourself, the brother goes on. Why? Like we are? Like, come on. Why did you do this? The perpetrator. Sorry, he whispered. I know that you did. I know what you did today, the brother. Look at me like I'm crazy for even, and I don't care what other. You're my brother. I love you. I want you to. And the shooter completely breaks. Prolonged high-pitched cry before his body collapses in violent sobs. The brother puts his head in his hands, then slams his, turns to the detective off camera. Can I hug him? The perpetrator has stared. The brother quickly stands, walks over to his wailing sibling. Arms. Fit at all your image of a mass shooter?
No, really.
It doesn't. Huh. One of many people look at mass shooters and call monsters. What's your thought about that? Are they monsters?
No, but the
So they're not monsters, but the action definitely was.
Say it's not helpful to dehumanize.
It's not helpful to dehumanize them. So are you saying that the word monster humanizes them?
I would say so.
What say? I'll come back to it in a second. It has failed. It is on them. And maybe that's one of the issues of we can, if they're monsters, then that's obviously not. And it's not anyone we know. Maybe. This is a quote from somebody, I can't remember. It has failed because the monsters are boys and men we know, our colleagues, our community. They're walking same secure doors we are, past the same guard armed like the rest of us. They're standing next to us when we rehearse. They're reading and watching the same media stories we are. They are insiders. What do you think about that?
It makes me think that somehow a person who commits this. Like they're part of the group that they're in.
Okay, so within that person, within a person.
They're part of who we are, but and I agree, but I'm imagining that maybe from their doing it, they haven't been.
They haven't felt inside, have they?
Yeah.
Period of time, they have not felt, and maybe for all their life, they have not felt. Okay, could be that they're really angry. Mhm.
Begins to kind of. A little broader,
Ah,
doesn't it?
tell,
Well, if they're not outsiders, then they are part of us. Responsibility. What is us then?
yeah,
If it produces that.
okay.
Makes me think if they're insiders, there's some that is to figure it out.
Ah,
I think.
It's more. A badge on says, I'm gonna be a mass shooter.
they look just like
The
you and
book
I.
says there's 3 indicators. That. Actually,
Mhm.
but
We'll
of
look at
the thousands of people.
Mhm,
The mass shooter.
mhm.
Um,
You, a childhood girlfriend of one of the most notorious monsters, you erase the ability for someone in their life could do this. Picture someone that you know. Something like that.
I have a very. And occasionally things get called, there's a lot of yelling, a lot of shouting, a lot of chaos.
Like yelling, chaos.
You don't know how to be a neighbor.
My first 10 years of teaching in second grade, I thought this kid is sure that he's troubled and gonna be in prison one day.
Mhm.
So I just think that you get by, but you know, trauma can affect people
Mhm.
later in their life.
I agree, and Vicky, I'm sure you feel this way too, is that of a little boy right now who is in 4th grade. And that if something does not change, he is going to also become a mass. I feel positive about it,
Mhm.
and just in his lifestyle. Just, I just see it.
Mhm.
And I don't, and because I want to help, but
You don't know.
I've also seen kids that and horrendous, awful things turn out.
Yeah,
So it's really tricky.
so it is
That's
tricky.
true. You get, 4th grade. That, and you write them off, not write them off because you want to help. Maybe trouble,
Mhm.
how do you? You need to be doing it well, obviously.
Yeah.
I have seen where one.
Yeah.
My daughter worked in an alternative school, and she said if I can just. School when they got out of juvie, this was the school that had to take them.
It's interesting, this first story. The two brothers grew up together. Lived together. Only one of those two became a mass shooter. So both, I'm sure, went through. I would guess, I'm only guessing. And think about. What is a scriptural understanding of who we? What does the Bible say about us as? How does it describe us? And, okay, one, we're made in the image of God. It made in the image of God?
Oh,
All people,
That we're all sinners.
and that we're also all sinners. We're not made monsters. We're not made, created mass shooters along the way. It took me a while to find it. I want to read one paragraph. And I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name. Why? Joe Dinar. Witness during the trial of Adolf Eichmann. Dinar entered the bulletproof glass. A man who had presided over the Jews. Suddenly, Dinar began to sob and collapsed to the floor. Out of bitterness. As he explained later in an interview, what's a terrifying realization, quote, I was afraid about I am capable to do this exactly like him. Dinar saw the skull behind the skin. He concluded, is in all of us. Eichmann is in all of us. In all of us.
Pretty well determined that ordinary people are capable of awful things if under the right circumstances, the right environment, the right to do awful things.
you'll probably know the Bible verse, but it's one of the. He tells the disciples or the church that, that. We're not in a war against men, but against princes, principalities, basically. And I find that relevant when you think of the passage when Judas Iscariot betrays Jesus. In the Bible verse, it says, and then Jesus said, go do what you must do. Entered him and he left to betray him. And the things, obviously the book supports that there's a series of there's a correlation, not a predictor, but a correlation happen. And we know that we live in sin and that sin gives the devil latitude to orchestrate things and could very is his handiwork. And if we follow what Paul taught, other than humans at this point, and when we think of that, people as human, that there is a force behind them. We begin to see that what are the tools we're given? Aren't those the tools of intervention that they talk about?
One of the challenges we have through difficulties and trauma and I know for myself, I have to talk about those things. And when I talk about them, they eat me up inside. Only, I think more recently, being present right now, as well as the last few decades, talk to somebody else and others about what's going on. And to do that, I'm not sure what would happen. I think load in some form, or another, whether it's a Mac. But I think there's part of us sure that's what's happened in these cases. They haven't. They tried and nobody's heard their cries. So how do you define a mass shooting? What's the four or more people, not including the public place. And I think it's has to involve a gun.
Because it's shooting.
Because it's a, yeah. At Tulsa, Oklahoma was not a gun. That was not considered mass shooting, even though I don't know how many died. I mean, score. So I don't exactly understand the reason. It is important to know that that's.
No, I think you've got a good. Through the same emotions, they just find a different method.
Yeah, yeah, but a mass shooting is exactly. So one of the issues to talk about also is the fact that when mass shootings occur, the real hype that we have to do something about it. How long does that? A week or two? Why did?
I think unless you're in a community for that happening, I suspect that there is a popular kind of sense, broad sense, yeah, the last.
Yeah, so it lasts as long as kind of the news cycle lasts.
Hard to sustain the empathy, the outrage. If you sustain it, you've got to do something about it. If you don't.
It's different when it's, I think this goes along with the making people. They're us, they're not them.
Mhm.
If they're not this. Then I don't have to think about it.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
I also think. We've become so used to it.
Yeah.
No longer. I don't mean it gets to ho-hum, but. That the news people don't think they can sustain. Written. News or. They want to go on to something more, but yeah, something else that can catch our fancy.
Just the last few days. That's been. We do get immune to things.
There is some agreement that you do. the shooter in this.
Yes.
And that may be one of the reasons that holding off. I know that was being done when we had people that those people were very often paper, not so much the personal tragedy, but the names. They were trying to minimize the effect. Go out into the community and cause other people to do this. And I think that was just particularly the school system. And then, the local paper.
Mhm. Yeah, I think. And let me. 19. Each year. In the 80s, it was 15 lives, in the 90s. 24, and today, 2021, there was 50. And I'm sure it's higher even now. The greater, more of awareness of mass shootings. Names were given. I think it was the Parkland shooting where a strong emphasis beginning by some of those who romanticize not to identify the shooters. Has that going to become a law? I'm not sure of a law, but today at all.
Also, in some of the early events, I would. Except going postal almost became part of the code. When somebody went postal.
Mm,
It was unhappy and he shot 2 or 3, 4, however many.
So the authors say, and understanding it, we must learn why mass shootings are and figure out who exactly the mass shooters are. Pathway to violence looks like. It's easy today. It's easy today to ride an issue of guns. Put it that way. But it's easy to say we need to. And as if that's the answer to mass shootings. Say, we have to understand what has lives of these people before we can begin to intersect. And what do you think?
Yeah, I think people will find.
I mean, like a gun anyway.
In Norway, some guy took. Youth camp. There's been more people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Other statement, this gun was bought legally.
Mhm.
The background check,
Yeah, and that's, the majority have been bought legally. Yeah.
and bought a gun, about 2 years ago. Went through background check. It was a questionable back. If they passed it,
Yeah, okay.
but. It's, they are we and, you can.
So the authors are also saying, though, that there is something that the United States is not the only country in the world That's given. And yet we're 10 times more have mass shootings in our nation than in other. Why do you think that is? What do you?
I would suspect that other countries have a much better mental health. I don't, the guns are. Have a gun and I'm not crazy about it, but I think guns is a secondary issue to. And there's a stigma to receive. For mental health treatment. Did anybody else watch the kid on Friday? It was on MSNBC. Looking at him, that he was mentally ill. He never. All these statements were being read about him, and he was guilty of all 7. He was 17. He never blinked. He just. The history of that kid is the kids that are mass shooters. But I divert. Urgency.
So that's one, mental health care systems.
I think there's a lot of hopelessness now in this country. If you're not. Apparently this is a form of suicide.
I know.
In the United States, there's a gun culture. We Indians, we watch crime shows, and the solution homes seems to be that you see a gun involved in it. I know that there's a romanticism about guns.
Doctors would say that from a very. They're a violent country. From the very beginning.
Other countries are. Except the Philippines, everybody is on there. You go to the grocery.
Yeah, a lot of places have that for.
Swiss universal belonging to the army. Everybody was went through that training, and they took it home with them. And so there's probably with guns, but at least there's a high availability of. I don't think they're particularly noted for their history of being rather peaceful people.
Other reasons why we as a nation.
Well, back this up necessarily with it for folks who may know this, but it seems like we such a cultural obsession with I don't even know what the term is, but in ourselves culturally, and it seems to me that there's a lot of opportunity. I feel like, well, I don't measure up, I don't belong, and I suppose that's universal. But it seems I get the sense, and I don't have no way to in America that it's stronger than it is in others. A little more inclusive. The social norms. I mean, it doesn't mean they don't have ways, but they tend to be a little more sort of accepting. I had that sensation when I visited Europe when I was a sophomore in high school. I went with the program, and it was like when we went out, not only did they have broad-based acceptance of one another, here it's more like, oh, you know, we have clicks and things that, that segregate. And I know that's probably more complex than we want to dive in. We face in America are a little more exaggerated than the pressures that people tend to face in other cultures around the world.
Outside the United States, the people you would say are very outspoken, Americans are. So they say what they think, and we don't, we hold it in. Ought to not say things that we think are not socially acceptable, but. Take for saying, my dear, you're not nice to know. And, you know, stuff like that, we would never.
I'm not sure if the Asian countries would do that. Would they do that?
They're nosy. Yes, how old are you is about the second question they ask. How much?
Okay, I've never been there.
Nation that defines everything and wins and losses,
Yes.
They power,
winners and losers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and so I think
And
that's
money,
something that. But I think, and I don't, maybe the book will go into it more, but, there's have power. I have a gun, I can control all of you, I can be remembered. It's, and I don't know how many people are like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
They're not.
Yeah, I'm not now, because look what I can do, and
issues in the United States is that if you work hard, you should be able to succeed. If you really put your mind to it, you should be able. And I'm not sure if it's in this chapter or in the next future. Happens to those who can't accomplish what they want.
Or
So
they're
many
not,
good goals are artificially imposed. They become unreachable for some people.
Okay.
You know, what defines success.
it's a very tiny trait. The meanest people. And the tiniest trait will keep another group in power. So you have to be the cutest, you have to be the skinniest. You have to be a straight A student. The pressure on teenagers is horrendous.
My kids, I had two sons. I don't know. In high school. You can become. Over and over and over again.
it's an unrealistic promise.
It's an absolutely.
We have freedom to try, that's,
My oldest son would have loved to have become a meteorologist. He tried. So that's somewhere along, and I don't know if it's in this. After that, even they talk about suicide as a despair. Depression? Well, depression, but an act of an act. Because they haven't measured up, they can't achieve what they want, they can't. And that fits in with mass shooting. Because a lot of the mass shooters, as we're gonna, so much trauma that they can't accomplish anything in their life. Failure. Let's ask. Here's a question. Where does God fit into need to accomplish in order forgiveness and hope? Forgiveness and hope. Does God deal with issues of despair?
I think for a person who doesn't have factors, like there are risk factors and there are protective factors in people's lives. And so risk factors, et cetera, the trauma, the pressure, all of that. And they're perceived by that person or put in place by other people. Of course, a protective factor, some connection to a sense that God loves me no matter that I'm not accomplishing all this, and so yeah, God is with me.
It's like that old cartoon with the little child. I have good in me because God doesn't make junk. We get forgiveness. We're able to lay down by.
Today's sermon.
It was spot on. We are off. Imagine the power of gratitude. That gives you, and I think what's missing. And efficacy doesn't come out of despair. Efficacy need a moment of reprieve in order to say, okay, what do I do? A bunch of people are taking my own life. Hopefully is, well, let's start here.
But a young person needs
Guidance.
guidance in that.
Guidance.
I think we have a terribly short. I know when I was growing, one in 10 people would go into a mental institution for part of it. Incredible percentage of people that would. I know now we're a little more ready to, rather than a mental health facility, you don't find mental hospitals. There isn't. But we don't have an appreciation for how many people go where they are depressed, can't put pressure. You look at the number of kids in high school that are thinking thoughts. The number of people are sort of hiding, cutting, but you've got their sleeve rolled down so you don't see it. I think even people that are getting tattoos probably are not their self-worth.
I don't know about that one, but. It's still. Creates shame in people's lives for help, for counseling. I worked in family therapy from Seattle Pacific and Presbyterian Counseling Services. And then was called to a congregation in Endicott, Washington, a town of 3 Eastern Washington, Southeast Washington. I ended up counseling during those years there, 8.5 years. Most vast majority of people that came to me just by word of mouth kind of Endicott. Because and that because if they knew, if people in Endicott knew that somebody was going to see the pastor for something, then they had trouble. And that thing, people from outside other communities could come. So we still have that stigma. That stigma. Yeah. You feel that stigma? Yeah, yeah. What's that feel like? It's just like I tried to go early Friday night because I was dizzy and just. It's like, we'll check it with PBH tomorrow and see what happens. But this has helped me getting all this information. I was able to call. Actually, as I look around, none of us who have the same ideas anyone else has, but thank you for sharing. You're welcome.
Can I just tell a little story? I went to check on a student in my school, she's new at the school, and she knows that I'm therapy, because my dad wanted to sign me up for therapy. Oh, I'm just checking in with you because you're new at our school and I don't know you very well and I want to give you a, but but there, and once I told her, no, I'm just checking in. Things are going okay for you, or do you have any questions? And that was okay with her. So, you know, yeah.
I know this first chapter and probably a number of chapters are really pinpointing the problems, the issues. I think the book does begin to highlight some things you need to be aware of. And part of that is the resource. So we will get into that. The last question I have on that sheet, I think, is the author's quote chapter 1. But I got the glasses on. But talking to mass shooters, given us reason to hope we are not helpless, the unacceptable as individuals, as institutions, and as break the cycle of violence. I guess the question is, do you have hope? Not yet. Not much. Not much.
Some time ago, I would say, yep, I do. I felt like before problem, and that I feel like having relatives, yeah, there was some reason for hope there.
Be some form of hope. There always has to be hope. What, I mean, just gotta have some hope.
I think we have to do what's indicated we need to do. If it's more mental health, you know, are we willing?
I think they would also say that are we as individuals willing to, especially with those people that we feel are going through so much trauma.
I don't think it has to all boil down to trained therapists and counselors.
Yeah.
Whoever.
And that's,
Yeah, it seems that with people say, I should have picked up on that, or I should have. Yeah, I knew that, and people, I don't think. Who do I call the police?
mhm.
But they don't have any reason.
So I think that is one of the issues that we're going to face. That is there. Are there things that we can be we deal with people in our daily lives who we think won't become mass shooters? I think we can expand mass. I think we all deal with people who are going through. What do? Don't know what to say or what to do. So we don't do anything.
Event, we don't want to think the worst about somebody. Oh, yeah, this is a problem here. We don't want. But what that might look like, but after the event, we're quite willing to separate. On them, you know, and
Yeah,
different and less than.
yes. Because somehow.
That's okay.
And yet, that's. To overcome, and I forgot who it was. It may have been Pastor Matt, it might have even. One of the people from the Sandy Hook shooting. Who said there are two types of people. There are good people, and there are good people. Which to me just exudes humanity for all.
Mhm.
In those terms, then we think this is treatable.
I don't know anyone who hasn't gone through pain. But I sure have known a lot of people who haven't had. Okay, we're gonna call. But I wanted to say thank you for being here. Thank you. Out and trying to understand a really, really difficult. It is not easy. But you're. And I guess all I would say, if you know of people who have said, no, I don't want to be here. So that's great. Jesus, you have placed us. This country and in this society, you've called us and we're here. Help us to look to you. The issues of our world and of our nation. You will guide us as we deal with individuals. That we might be sensitive to all people. In their lives. So we pray in your name, trusting that you conversation in ways in our lives. In your name, amen. We'll look at chapters 2 and 3. I don't have. That would be great too, but I know.
Thank you, Stan.
I did.